So I'm going to start at the beginning of the book tonight. I feel like I kind of went right into Plato off the top, so I think it would be important in order for the chronological aspects of it. It's important for the chronological aspects. Um, but yeah, so it starts with part one, and it's Socrates' predecessors. Human beings have lived on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years. We, of course, cannot know all the experiences and thoughts of the earliest people. Still, it is reasonable to suppose that people then, as now, were driven by a desire to explain the world. Perhaps our earliest ancestors thought about how the world was formed, whether they were unique among the animals, and whether there was a world beyond the earthly one surrounding them. They may have also wondered whether there was a uniform standard of moral behavior or social order that applied to the various tribes they encountered. Whatever they may have thought about these subjects, their opinions are now irretrievably lost in time. It is only through the introduction of writing, a comparatively recent invention, that we know the precise speculations of any of our ancestors. When we look at the earliest writings from around the globe, we find that various regions had their own speculative traditions, such as these of East Asia, the Indian subcontinent, the Middle East, and Africa. This book is an account of one such tradition, namely that which developed within Europe and was later exported to the Americas and elsewhere around the world. This tradition is often called Western, in quotations, designating its origin within the western part of the Eurasian landmass. That's a hook, right? I think so. The story of Western philosophy begins in a series of Greek islands and colonies during the 6th century BCE, that is, before the Common Era. Some original thinkers were driven by very specific puzzles, most notably, what are things really like, and how can we explain the process of change in things? The solutions they gave to these puzzles were shortly thereafter dubbed philosophy, the love of wisdom. And I love that definition. That's such a beautiful definition. It just truly is. And it's like exactly why I feel like precisely aligned there. Like just, yeah, the love of wisdom. What underlies these speculations was the gradual recognition that things are not exactly what they seem to be. Appearance often differs from reality. Fucking A. There are brute facts of birth, death, growth, and decay, coming into being and passing away. These facts raise sweeping questions of how things and people came into existence, can differ at different times, and pass out of existence only to be followed by other things and persons. Many of the answers given to these questions by the earliest philosophers are not so important as the fact that they focused upon these specific questions. They approached these problems with a fresh point of view that was in stark contrast to the more mythical approach taken by the great poets of the time. I'm sorry, when I talk a lot, I get like some stuff like saliva on the side. The birthplace of Greek philosophy was the seaport of Miletus, and I hope to whoever's up there, that's what I'm saying it right, Miletus. The birthplace of Greek philosophy was the seaport of Miletus, located across the Aegean Sea from Athens, on the western shores of Ionia in Asia Minor. Because of their location, the first Greek philosophers are called either Milesians or Ionians. By the time the Milesian philosophers began their systematic work in roughly 585 BCE, Miletus had been a crossroads for both seaborne commerce and cosmopolitan ideas. The wealth of the city allowed for leisure time, without which the life of art and philosophy could not develop. You know, like by the time the Milesian philosophers began their systematic work in roughly 585 BCE, Miletus had been a crossroads for both seaborne commerce and cosmopolitan ideas. Then this part. The wealth of the city allowed for leisure time, without which the life of art and philosophy could not develop. just like actually breaks my heart type stuff, like type shit, type stuff, PG type. But yeah, like, yeah, could not develop, fucking frowned upon type almost. You know what? Fucking nuts, knuckin' futs. All right. Yeah, man, the wealth of the city allowed for leisure time without which a life of art and philosophy could not develop. Further, the broad-mindedness and inquisitiveness of its people created a congenial atmosphere for philosophical, intellectual activity. My God, my brain, I feel like would feel like it's on the fucking fritz. I would just be spazzing out if that was the environment. I want to read that again. That sounds amazing. Further, the broad-mindedness and inquisitiveness of its people created a congenial atmosphere for philosophical, intellectual activity. Fuck. That's really, really cool. Man, all right. Oh my God. Earlier, Iona had produced Homer, and then says circa 700 BCE, author of the Iliad and Odyssey. Sorry if I combine those. In these timeless classics of epic poetry, Homer describes the scene of Mount Olympus, where the gods pursued lives very similar to those of their human counterparts on Earth. This poetic view of the world also depicted ways in which the gods intruded into people's affairs. In particular, the Homeric gods would punish people for their lack of moderation, and especially for their pride or insubordination, with which the Greeks called hubris. I've heard that word so much in like not so much, but I've heard it a couple times. I was like, what the hell is that? So I always looked it up. And I always look up words. And that's one thing, if you could ever do that, look up a fucking word you don't know. It'll just make your brain bigger, I promise. It just does, if you start doing it on like a habit. And then fucking using them when you don't know how to. That's the biggest part, I think, is like yeah, just throw it out there, see if like people, you wait seconds, see if like people like, oh, you didn't use that shit right, but then and then it's like, okay, now use it this way now. It's like that's how you learn yeah, that's how you learn a lot of language, I believe. But back to the book. Damn. Yeah, so the Homeric gods would punish people for their lack of moderation and especially for their pride or insubordination, which the Greeks called hubris. It is not that Homer's gods were exceptionally moral beings. Instead, they were merely stronger than humans and demanded obedience. That's funny. All right. Like gods don't bleed type, but I feel like it was probably such a separation between them that like they felt like it was. I feel like, I mean, even now it seems like we feel like, we dehumanize these people who are, like, we put people on a pedestal just because of the position that they might be in. And it's just like, yo, it's just a fucking human being. That's skin and bones and the brain inside. It's not knowing what the fuck he's here for, trying to figure it out, just like you, just like everybody else. So it's like, I don't know. Think of somebody is so like serious and intense. It's like, no, they're not. And whatever energy they're bringing to you, you can bring right back to them. That's it. Fucking frisbee it. That's it. Although Homer depicts the gods with largely human features, he occasionally hints at a rigorous order in nature. Specifically, he suggests that there is a power called fate, to which even the gods are subject and to which everyone and everything must subordinate. I mean, yeah, okay, on a large scale. Okay, yeah, I get that. Yeah. I just don't like the word subordination too much, but like I understand it in that context because there are forces at play that we have no control or say in, and it could at any time decide to just flick us off our little rock. But it's like, hey, yeah, we'll let you guys stay for whatever reason. I think it's so crazy. Like, I don't know, I've heard it called like the Goldilocks zone or whatever that the Earth is in, and just like the exact location and all that shit is so crazy. Like we're in the perfect space away from the sun to habit the shit that we do. And like we're fucking moving 1.2 million miles throughout space. We're spinning fucking, I think 24,000 miles an hour. Like it's just stupid. And it's just all working out though. We're all just living. Worried about stupid shit all day long, all life long. Nevertheless, Homer's poetic imagination is dominated so thoroughly by human terms that his world is peopled everywhere with human types. Also, his conception of nature is that of capricious. I don't know how to ever pronounce that. Capricious. Capricious wills at work instead of the reign of physical natural laws. It was Hesiod, circa 700 BCE, writing around the same time as Homer, when altered this concept of the gods and fate. He thus removed from the gods all capriciousness and instead ascribed to them a moral consistency. Although Hesiod retains the notion that the gods control nature, he balances this personal element in the nature of things with an emphasis on the impersonal operation of the moral law of the universe. The moral order, in Hesiod's view, is still the product of Zeus's commands. However, contrary to Homer, these commands are neither capricious nor calculated to gratify the gods, but instead are fashioned for the good of people. That sounds sick, yeah? For the good of people. For Hesiod, the universe is a moral order, and from this idea it is a short step to say, without any reference to the gods, that there is an impersonal force controlling the structure of the universe and regulating its processes of changes. I believe in that. And that's why I was saying, like, you know, to whoever's up there. Because it's like, yeah, everything's set up too perfect, bro. You know, somebody just spun the little thimble from Inception and we're on the right spin and forever be. Like, how the fuck, who did it? Or, like, what did it? How did it happen? I don't know. Shit like that. And I know probably you can find an answer from some NASA's or a physicist or, you know, person in that field of, like, what the reasoning may be from it. But it's still just incredible that that is a event that had transpired, and if it hadn't, things would be drastically different, you know. So odds are so rare that you're here right now, bro. Do whatever the fuck you want, you know, whatever the fuck it is. Not that much time, right? Just do the thing, you know, right, with some stipulations, obviously, but, you know, do the thing that makes you, you know, that you think about when you go to sleep at night. Like, but the thing that's always in your brain that's but not a part of your life. Do that thing. Hopefully that thing is a good thing that will help others as well along the way, and it's not something detrimental. But and that's why I said there's stipulations to it. Obviously, it's like, you know, it's like Nike, you just do it. It's like, well, what? It's like, what are we doing? You know, and then we can talk about it. But I don't know, you know. So he thus removed, like I said, from the gods all capriciousness and instead ascribed to them a moral consistency. Although Hesiod retains the notion that the gods control nature, he balances this personal element in the nature of things with an emphasis on the impersonal operation of the moral law of the universe. The moral order, in Hesiod's view, is still the product of Zeus's commands. However, contrary to Homer, these commands are neither capricious nor calculated to gratify the gods, but instead are fashioned for the good of people. For Hesiod, the universe is a moral order, and from this idea it is a short step to say, without any reference to the gods, that there is an impersonal force controlling the structure of the universe and regulating its processes of changes. That I just had to repeat that. That was a yeah banger. This was the short step taken by the great Milesian philosophers, namely Thales, Thales, circa 585 BCE, Anaximander, circa 610 to 546 BCE, and Anaximenes, circa 585 to 528 BCE, whereas Hesiod still thought in terms of traditional mythology with human-like gods. Philosophy among the Milesians began as an act of independent thought, to ask as they did, what are things really like, and how can we explain the process of change in things? Substantially departs from the poetry of Homer and Hesiod, and moves toward a more scientific way of questioning. It's a heavy book of thinking. Moves toward a more scientific way of thinking. In point of fact, at this stage of history, science and philosophy were the same thing, and only later did various specific disciplines separate themselves from the field of philosophy. Medicine was the first to do so. Thus, we can rightly call the Milesian primitive scientists, as well as the first Greek philosophers, the important thing to keep in mind. The important thing to keep in mind, though, is the Greek philosophy is from the start was an intellectual activity. It was not a matter only of seeing or believing, but of thinking. And philosophy meant thinking about basic questions with an attitude of genuine and free inquiry. It was not a matter only of seeing or believing, but of thinking. And philosophy meant thinking about basic questions with an attitude of genuine and free inquiry. Got it? Good. What is permanent in existence? Let's fucking go. I just love this shit. Every chapter is just like some deep shit that I'm like, yeah, I want to know more about it. Whatever it's got to say. And the way it's written, I feel like it's so, at least for me personally, I feel like I receive it very well, just how the information is given out. I feel like sometimes the way it's written, it can be kind of hard to understand, but I feel like the references that are made and the chronological order of the thought that's being explained, I think like this book was such a snag when I got it. Crazy. And it was for what, $2, $3. And it's just crazy, man. Crazy. Fucking crazy. We hold a 6-inch digital screen in our pocket that can't fucking, This book is just, it's a weird juxtaposition. Scary one. Thales. Right, that's the guy. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Thales. We do not know as much as we would like about Thales and Miletus, and what we do know is rather anecdotal in nature. He left no writings, and all that is available are fragmentary references to him by later writers who recorded memorable incidents in his career. He was a contemporary of Greek king Croesus and statesman Solon, and the years of his life are set between 624 and 546 BCE. During a military campaign against Persia, he apparently solved the difficult logistical problem of enabling the Lydian king's army across to the worldwide. Sorry, let me repeat that. That's a lot. All right. During a military campaign against Persia, he apparently solved the difficult logistical problem of enabling the Lydian king's army to cross the wide Halys River. His solution was to dig a channel that diverted part of the flow, thereby making 2 narrower rivers over which bridges could be built. The words are just fucking... I have an astigmatism, right? And I don't think these are the right glasses. I have prescription sunglasses and I have another pair that are the same, but they're not prescribed. And so I feel like I'm reading out those right now, and shit's fucking difficult because shit's so blurry. Like if I don't have my glasses on, all these fucking things on screens look so fucking smudged together. I don't know why that shit started happening to me, but I've been dealing with it for like the past 5 years and I hate it. Enough about me. Fucking, that's annoying. So, right? So, all right. So his solution was to dig a channel that diverted part of the flow, thereby making 2 narrower rivers over which bridges could be built. While traveling in Egypt, Thales worked out a way of measuring the height of the pyramids. Yo, this shit is so fucking dope. And it's just like, yeah, just use your fucking noggin, dude. Like, literally, use the noodle. Like, it's up there. Like, you could solve something so, like, that's why when it said the definition about thinking about basic questions with genuine curiosity, basically, right? Like, that's exactly it. That's it. That's the nectar. That's where it's at. That's where you're going to find the answers, if there's any. You're going to maybe find more questions, if anything. More questions, more often than not, the questions are answered with questions, but that's almost beautiful in itself, you know? Yeah. So, yeah, fucking Thales, bro. He worked out a way of measuring the height of the pyramids. His solution was to use the simple procedure of measuring a pyramid's shadow at the time of day when his own shadow was equal in length to his own height. Like, you know what I mean? How could it not be an accurate measurement? That's just so brilliant, but so simple. It's like you're not even doing, you're just sitting back and watching just nature play itself out. And it's like I can just use how nature's sight, I can mathematically equate nature's pattern in a sense through that. And I think you can do it further, but like I'm just saying, using the pyramid shadow at the time of day where your shadow, I'm gonna just reread it again. All right. Thales yet worked out a way. His solution was to use the simple procedure of measuring a pyramid shadow at that time of day when his own shadow was equal in length to his own height. We went backwards, bro. Fucking, we hit reverse, bro, and we were going down a hill at the same fucking time. We didn't give a damn. Going fucking, probably pushing 220 at least, and just hauling ass down that hill. I don't get it. We went backwards. I don't know. My grandfather had kind of that type of thinking. I always feel stupid about it. Like I'd like work at his house over the weekends and shit, like doing just crazy yard work. Cause he used to have, he would, when he was alive, he had a garden that like, it was a jungle and it was just, the yard work was not yard work. It was like, you had to be there, right? And my brother Kyle was, so he's the only one that gets the shit, but you had to fucking be there. And like, I don't know, problems would just come up and like, he would let us think about it, try to like let us come up with the solution. I just always remember my solutions being dumb as fuck. Like I'll just be like I'll look around and just like find something. I'd be like, yeah, we can do this with that, and like I guess it would hold up, right? And then he just like knew instantly like just the solution. I don't know. It's funny like that. It's funny like that. All right. Things are so simple and we just complicate it. We think, when you could just be like right in front of you, it's just like, that's the solution. Okay. It's very strange. And that's a great lesson I learned from him. It may have been during these Egyptian travels, too, that he became acquainted with the kinds of knowledge that enabled him to predict the eclipse of the sun on May 28th, 585 BCE. In a practical vein, while in Miletus, he constructed an instrument for measuring the distance of ships sighted at sea, and as an aid to navigation. He urged sailors to use the constellation Little Bear as the surest guide for determining the direction of the north. It was probably inevitable that tradition would attach questionable tales to such an extraordinary person as Thales. For example, Plato, circa 427 to 347 BCE, writes about the joke which the clever, witty Thracian handmaid is said to have made about Thales when he fell into a well as he was looking up at the stars. When he fell into a well as he was looking up at the stars. She said that he was so eager to know what was going on in heaven that he could not see what was before his feet. Plato adds that this is a jest which is equally applicable to all philosophers. Fuck you. Aristotle 384 to 322 BCE describes another episode. There is the story which is told of Thales and Miletus, and it is a story about a scheme for making money, which is fathered on Thales, owing to his reputation for wisdom. He was criticized for his poverty, which was supposed to show the uselessness of philosophy, but observing from his knowledge of meteorology, as the story goes, that there was likely to be a heavy crop of of olives. I thought it was an olive. Yeah, it was likely to be a heavy crop of olives during the next summer. And having a small sum at his command, he paid down earnest money early in the year for the hire of all the olive presses in. I do not have the right fucking glasses on. I apologize. So he paid for all the fucking oil presses in Miletus and Chios, and he managed, in the absence of any higher offer, to secure them at a low rate. When the season came and there was a sudden and simultaneous demand for a number of presses, he let out the stock he had collected at any rate he chose to fix, and making a considerable fortune. He's just playing a fucking joke. He's just like philosophy makes money. Oh, hang on. But it's not the point of philosophy, bitch. All right, hold up. Let me go back for you. So he bought all the fucking olive oil presses in Miletus and Chios, and he managed, in the absence of any higher offer, to secure them at a low rate. When the season came and there was a sudden and simultaneous demand for a number of presses, he let out the stock he had collected at any rate he chose to fix, and making a considerable fortune. He succeeded in proving that it is easy for philosophers to become rich if they so desire, though it is not the business which they are really about. Fucking, I gotta stop cursing, I'm sorry, but it is not the business which they are really about. Fuck. However, Thales is famous, not for his general wisdom or his practical shrewdness, but because he opened up a new era of thought, for which he has rightly earned the title of first philosopher of Western civilization. Thales' novel inquiry concerns the nature of things. What is everything made of, and what kind of stuff goes into the composition of things? With these questions, Thales was trying to account for the fact that there are many different kinds of things, such as earth, clouds, and oceans. From time to time, some of these things change into something else, and yet they still resemble each other in certain ways. Thales' unique contribution to thought, with his notion that, in spite of the differences between various things, there is nevertheless a basic similarity between them all. Fucking A. The many are related to each other by the one. He assumed that some single element, some stuff, a stuff that contained its own principle of action or change, lay at the foundation of all physical reality. For Thales, this one, or this stuff, is water. Although there is no record of how Thales came to the conclusion that water is the cause of all things, Aristotle writes that he might have derived it from observation of simple events, perhaps from seeing that the nutriment of all things is moist, and that heat is generated from the moist and kept alive by it. Thales, Aristotle continues, got his notion from this fact, and from the fact that the seeds of all things have a moist nature, and water is the origin of nature. Water is the origin of the nature of most things. Other phenomena, such as evaporation and freezing, also suggest that water takes on different forms. Bruce Lee, right? Shout out him. Just that quote, that's all I'm saying. I don't really know much more about him, and I apologize, but that quote is good about being water. Be the water. That's good. But the accuracy of Thales' analysis of the composition of things is far less important than the fact that he raised the question concerning the nature of the world. His question set the stage for a new kind of inquiry, one that could be debated on its merits and could be either confirmed or refuted, and could neither, I think, but let me go back. I'm sorry. one that could be debated on its merits and could be, oh yeah, either, all right, so one that could be debated on its merits and could be either confirmed or refuted by further analysis. Admittedly, Thales also said that all things are full of gods, but this notion apparently had no theological significance for him. Thus, when he tried to explain the power in things such as magnetic powers in stones, he shifted the discussion from a mythological base to a scientific one. From his starting point, others were to follow with alternative solutions, but always with his problem before them. I know that is a lot. It's probably easier just to go back one more time, just to hear it again, slow it down, whatever you got to do. But I'm just trying to read. Yeah, I'm doing this thing. Next up is Anaximander. We're going to take a break. I feel like I've been reading a ton. We got quite the night ahead of us. This will probably be a part 2. Maybe I could just do the whole thing. We'll see. Damn. It really goes through all his fucking predecessors, like just off the rip. Thought it'd be broken up a little bit, but we could go. So Anaximander, right? Anaximander was a younger contemporary and a pupil of Thales. He agreed with his teacher that there is some single basic stuff out of which everything comes. Unlike Thales, however, Anaximander said that the basic stuff is neither water nor any other specific element. Water and all other definite things, he argued, are only specific variations or offshoots of something that is more primary. It may well be, he thought, that we find water or moisture in various forms everywhere. Water is only one specific thing among many other elements, and all these specific things need some more elementary stuff to account for their origin, their primary substance out of which all these specific things come. Anaximander argued is an indefinite or boundless realm. Thus, on the one hand, we find specific and determinate things in the world, like a rock or a puddle of water. Yet on the other hand, we find the origin of these things, which he calls stop. Which he calls the indeterminate boundless. Whereas actual things are specific, their source is indeterminate, and whereas things are finite, the original stuff is infinite or boundless. Besides offering a new idea about the original substance of things, Anaximander advanced philosophy by attempting, excuse me, I apologize. I'm going to start over. Besides offering a new idea about the original substance of things, Anaximander advanced philosophy by attempting some explanation for his new idea. Thales had not dealt in any detail with the problem of explaining how the primary stuff became the many different things we see in the world. Anaximander, though, addressed this question precisely. Although his explanation may seem strange, it represents an advance in knowledge. Specifically, it deals with known facts from which hypotheses can be formulated. Instead of explaining natural phenomena in mythical, non-debatable terms, his explanation is the indeterminate, boundless, is the unoriginated, and indestructible primary substance of things, yet it also has eternal motion. As a consequence of this motion, the various specific elements came into being as they separated off from the original substance. Thus there was an eternal motion in which the heavens came to be. First warm and cold were separated off, and from these two came moist. Then from these came earth and air. First warm and cold were separated off, and from these two came moist. Then from the buck. First, warm and cold were separated off, and from these two came moist. Then from these came earth and air. Turning to the origin of human life, Anaximander said that all life comes from the sea, and that in the course of time, living things came out of the sea to dry land. He suggested that people evolved from creatures of a different kind. This, he argued, follows from the fact that other creatures are quickly self-supporting, whereas humans alone need prolonged nursing, and that therefore we would not have survived if this had been our original form. Commenting on Anaximander's account of the origin of human beings, Plutarch writes that the Syrians actually revere the fish as being of similar race and nurturing. In this they philosophize more suitably than Anaximander, for he declares not that fishes and men came into being in the same parents, but that originally men came into being inside fishes, having been nurtured there like sharks and having become adequate to look after themselves. They then came forth and took to the land. Returning to the vast cosmic scene, Anaximander thought that they were many worlds and many systems of universes existing all at the same time. All of them die out, and there is a constant alternation between their creation and destruction. The cyclical process, he believed, is a matter of rigorous necessity. Opposite forces in nature conflict and cause an injustice, poetically speaking, that requires their ultimate destruction. The only sentence that survives from Anaximander's writings makes his point, again somewhat poetically. From what source things arise, to that they return of necessity when they are destroyed. For they suffer punishment and make reparation to one another for their injustice according to the order of time. I'll say that again. From what sources things arise, to that they return of necessity when they are destroyed. For they suffer the punishment and make reparation to one another for their injustice according to the order of time. Like think for yourself for a second there, What do you think that shit means? This book is so good. So good. I know I need to quit fucking vaping. This shit's so gross. It's not cool. Not cool. So, moving forward, Anaximenes, the third and last of the Milesian philosophers, was Anaximenes, circa 585 BCE to 528 BCE, who was a young associate of Anaximander. He considered Anaximander's answer to the question concerning the composition of natural things, but was dissatisfied with it. The notion of the boundless as being the source of all things was simply too vague and intangible. He could understand why Anaximander chose this solution over Thales' notion that water is the cause of all things. The boundless could at least help explain the infinite background to the wide variety of finite and specific things. Still, the indeterminate boundless had no specific meaning for Anaximenes, and therefore he chose to focus on a definite substance just as Thales did. Yet at the same time he tried to incorporate the advance achieved by Anaximander. Attempting to mediate between the two views of the predecessors, Anaximenes designated air as the primary substance from which all things come. Like Thales' notion of water, air is a definitive substance, and we can readily see it at the root of all things. For example, although air is invisible, we live only as long as we can breathe, and just as our soul, being air, holds us together, so do breath and air encompass the whole world. Like Anaximander's boundless in continued motion, air is spread everywhere. Although unlike the boundless, it is a specific and tangible material substance that can be identified. Moreover, the air's motion the air's motion is a far more specific process than Anaximander's separating off. To explain how air is the origin of all things, Anaximenes argued that things are what they are by virtue of how condensed or expanded the air is that makes up those things. In making this point, he introduced the important new idea that difference in quality are caused by differences in quantity. Yeah, yeah. The expansion and contraction of air represent quantitative changes, and these changes occurring in a single substance's account for the variety of things that we see in the world around us, expansion of air causes warming and to the extreme fire, whereas contraction or condensation causes cooling and the transformation of air into solids by way of gradual transition, whereby, as Anaximenes says, air that is condensed forms winds. If this process goes further, it gives water, still further earth. And the greatest condensation of all is found in stones. Although these Milesian philosophers proceeded with scientific concerns and temperaments, they did not form their hypotheses the way modern scientists would, nor did they devise any experiments to test their theories. Their ideas have a dogmatic quality, an attitude to it's nothing like right now, huh? A dogmatic quality, an attitude of positive assertion rather than the tentativeness of true hypotheses. But we must remember that the critical questions concerning the nature and limits of human knowledge had not yet been raised, nor did the Milesians refer in any way to the problem of the relation between spirit and body. Their reduction of all reality to a material origin certainly raises this question, but only later did philosophers recognize this as a problem. Whatever may be the usefulness of their specific ideas about water, the boundless, and air is the primary substance of things, the real significance of the Milesians is again that they, for the first time, raised the question about the ultimate nature of things and made the first halting but direct inquiry into what nature really consists of. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. Now, I know there's been some news about Pythagoras, so like, I don't know what this is going to be accurate. This was written, I think, in like 2007 type. So, like, I don't really know. And I'll be right back. Yo, these sweatpants fucking broke. Drawstring, crazy. It's been an awful life. I don't know why I haven't bought new ones. I'm so petty like that. Like, I just won't. I've been low riding them. No good. I suck in some strawberries. Eat more fruit, man. I'll tell you. Blueberries. Strawberries, blueberries. That's the main thing for me. I fuck around with raspberries though. Don't get me wrong. Blackberries occasionally, you know. Apples are straight. I know they say apple a day keeps the doctor away, but I don't know, they don't do it like strawberries or blueberries. Any type of fruit like that's crazy. All right. So Pythagoras, right? So like I said, like I know I heard some shit like he didn't really develop the Pythagorean theorem and shit. So I don't know what's happening out there with all that shit, but this is what the book says. Okay. Yeah, I'm changing my glasses. That shit is crazy. I can't read shit. But it like helps sometimes because that light is so fucking bright sometimes. I don't like it. But normal glasses. So Pythagoras, yeah, across a span of water from Miletus, located in the Aegean Sea, was the small island of Samos, the birthplace of a truly extraordinary and wise man, Pythagoras, circa 570 to 497 BCE. From the various scraps of information we have about him and his followers, an incomplete but still fascinating picture of his new philosophical reflections emerges. Apparently dissatisfied with conditions not only on Samos but generally in Ionia during the tyrannical rule of the rich Polycrates. Pythagoras migrated. Everything, I'm good. My teeth, I always get some shit like either here or like here. I hate it because I got like a little bit of space there, bothers me. Anyways, right? So that shit about Pythagoras. So still fascinating, reflections on philosophical ideas emerges, apparently dissatisfied with conditions not only on Samos but generally in Ionia during the tyrannical rule of the rich Polycrates. Pythagoras migrated to southern Italy and settled there in the prosperous Greek city of Crotone, I don't know. His active philosophical life there is usually dated from about 525 to 500 BCE. Aristotle tells us that the Pythagoreans devoted themselves to mathematics. Excuse me. They were the first to advance this study, and having been brought up in it, they thought its principles were the principles of all things. In contrast to the Milesians, the Pythagoreans said that things consist of numbers. Although this account of things sounds quite strange, it makes more sense when we consider why Pythagoras became interested in numbers and what his conceptions of numbers was. Do tell. You know? Pythagoras became interested in mathematics for what appear to be religious reasons. His originality consists partly in his conviction that the study of mathematics is the best purifier of the soul. He is in fact the founder both of a religious sect and a school of mathematics. What gave rise to the Pythagorean sect was people's yearning for a deeply spiritual connection that could provide the means for purifying the soul and for guaranteeing its immortality. That's a never-ending desire for the masses. The Homeric gods were not gods in the Homeric gods were not gods in the theological sense, since they were as immoral as gods were not God. Fuck me. The Homeric gods were not gods in the theological sense, since they were as immoral as human beings. As such, they could be neither the object of worship nor the source of any spiritual power to overcome the pervading sense of moral uncleanliness and the anxiety that people had over the shortness of life and the finality of death. The religion of Dionysus had earlier stepped into this area of human concern and was widespread during the 7th and 6th centuries BCE. The worship of Dionysus satisfied to some extent those yearnings for cleansing and immortality. Organized into small secret and mystical societies, the devotees would worship Dionysus and under various animal forms, working themselves into a frenzy of wild dances and songs. They would drink the blood of these animals, which they had torn apart in a state of intoxication. They would finally collapse in complete exhaustion, convinced that at the height of their frenzy, the spirit of Dionysus had entered their bodies, purifying them and conferring his own immortality upon their souls. The Pythagoreans were also concerned with the mystical problems of purification and immortality. It was for this reason that they turned to science and mathematics, the study of which they considered the best purge for the soul. In scientific and mathematical thought, they saw a type of life that was purer than any any other kind. Thought and reflection represent a clear contrast to the idea of vocational trade and competition for various honors. Pythagoras distinguished three different kinds of lives, and by implication, the three divisions of the soul. By way of the illustration, there are, he said, three different kinds of people who go. He said there are three different kinds of people who go to the Olympian Games. The lowest class is made up of those who go there to buy and sell to make a profit. Next are those who go to there to compete, to gain honors. Best of all, he thought, are those who come as spectators. Let's read that again. Next are those who are there to compete, to gain honors. Best of all, he thought, are those who came as spectators, who reflect upon and analyze what is happening. Of these three, the spectator illustrates the activity of philosophers who are liberated from daily life. Yeah, okay, I get it, and its imperfections. To look on is to look on, in quotations, is one of the meanings of the Greek word theory. Interesting. To look on is one of the meanings of the Greek word theory. I love that. Pythagoreans considered theoretical thinking or pure science and pure mathematics to be a purifier of the soul. Mathematical thought could liberate people from thinking about particular things and lead their thoughts to the permanent and ordered world of numbers. The final mystical triumph of the Pythagorean is liberation from the wheel of birth, from the migration of soul to animal and other forms in the constant process of death and birth. In this way, the spectator achieves a unity with God and shares his immortality. For brief moments, absolutely, I understand. To connect this religious concern with the philosophical aspects of the Pythagoreans, we should first mention their interest in music. They considered music highly therapeutic for certain nervous disorders. There was, they believed, some relation between the harmonies of music and the harmony of a person's interior life. Get that through your head. Highly therapeutic for certain nervous disorders. There was, they believed, some relation between the harmonies of music and the harmony of a person's interior life. But their true discovery in the field of music was that the music intervals between the notes could be expressed numerically. They discovered that the length of the strings of a musical instrument is proportionate to the actual interval of the sounds they produce. Pluck a violin string, for example, and you will get a specific note. Divide that string in half and you will get a pitch 1 octave higher, the ratio here being 2:1. All the other intervals could similarly be expressed in numerical ratios. Thus, for the Pythagoreans, music was a remarkable example of the pervasive relevance of numbers in all things. This led Aristotle to say that they saw that the attributes and the ratios of the musical scales were expressible in numbers. All other things seemed in their nature to be modeled after numbers, and numbers seemed to be the first things in the whole of nature, and to the whole of heaven, to be a musical scale and a number. Pythagoreans had a special practice of counting and writing numbers, and this may have facilitated their view that all things are numbers. Apparently, they built numbers out of individual units, using pebbles to count. The number 1 was therefore a single pebble, and all other numbers were created by the addition of pebbles, somewhat like our present practice of representing numbers on dice by the use of dots. But the significant point is the Pythagoreans discovered a relation between arithmetic and geometry. A single pebble represents 1, points make a line. No, a single pebble represents 1 as a single point, but 2 is made up of 2 pebbles or 2 points, and these 2 points make a line. 3 points is in the corners of a triangle, create a plane or area, and 4 points can create a solid, or represent a solid. This suggested to Pythagoreans a close relationship between number and magnitude, and Pythagoras is credited with what we now call the Pythagorean theorem. And that's what I was just mentioning. I don't know. I think there was some shit about that. Not really anymore. He's credited with that. I don't really know, but whatever. The equation is still fucking real, you know? The square of the hypotenuse is equal to the squares of the other 2 sides of a right-angled triangle. This correlation between numbers and magnitude provided immense consolation to those who sought evidence of a principle of structure and order in the universe. It is understandable how an interesting but possibly apocryphal, yeah, okay. It is understandable how interesting. It is understandable how an interesting but possibly apocryphal story could have arisen. arisen. A Pythagorean named Hippasus, I almost said hippopotamus, a Pythagorean named Hippasus, Hippa, Hippasus, a Pythagorean named Hippasus, so the story goes, was drowned in the Hellespont for letting out the secret that this principle does not hold true in the case of the isosceles right triangle. Oh shit! He was just like, "Yo, bro, like, what if we did a triangle this way?" They're like, nope, out. Shouldn't be laughing because that's fucked up, but it's just like, all right, whatever. Yeah, shit's crazy. The importance of this relation between number and magnitude was that numbers for the Pythagoreans meant certain figures, such as a triangle, square, and rectangle. The individual points were boundary stones, which marked out fields. Moreover, the Pythagoreans differentiated these triangular numbers, square numbers, rectangular numbers, and spherical numbers as being odd or even, thereby giving themselves a new way of treating the phenomenon of the conflict of opposites. In all these forms, numbers were, therefore, far more than abstractions. They were specific kinds of entities. To say, then, as the Pythagoreans did, that all things are numbers meant for them that there is a numerical basis for all things possessing shape and size. In this way, they moved from arithmetic to geometry and then to the structure of reality. All things had numbers, and their odd and even values explained opposites in things, such as one and many, square and oblong, straight and curved, or rest and motion. Even light and dark are numerical opposites, and are as are male and female, good and evil as well. This way of understanding numbers led the Pythagoreans to formulate their most important philosophical notion, namely the concept of form. The Milesians had conceived the idea of a primary matter or stuff out of which everything was constituted, but they had no coherent concept of how specific things are differentiated from the single matter. They all spoke of an unlimited stuff, whether it be water, air, or the indeterminate boundless, by which they all meant some primary matter. The Pythagoreans now came forth with the conception of form. For them, form meant limit, and limit is understandable, especially in numerical terms. The concept of limit, they believed, was best exemplified in music and medicine, for in both of these arts, the central fact is harmony, and harmony is achieved by taking into account proportions and limits. In music, there is a numerical ratio by which different notes must be separated in order to achieve concordant intervals. Harmony is the form that the limiting structure of numerical ratio imposes upon the unlimited possibilities for sounds possessed by the strings of a musical instrument. In medicine, the Pythagoreans saw the same principle at work. Health is the harmony or the balance or proper ratio of certain opposites, such as hot and cold or wet and dry, and the volumetric balance of various specific elements later known as biochemicals. Indeed, the Pythagoreans looked upon the body as they would a musical instrument. Health, they said, is achieved when the body is in tune, and disease is a consequence of undue tensions or the loss of proper tuning of the strings. In the literature of early medicine, the concept of number was frequently used in connection with health and disease, particularly when number was translated to mean figure. The true number or figure, therefore, refers to the proper balance of all the elements and functions of the body. Number, then, represents the application of limit, in parentheses form, to the unlimited, in parentheses matter. So limit, form, unlimited, matter. And the Pythagoreans referred to music and medicine only as vivid illustrations of their larger concept, namely that all things are numbers. The brilliance of Pythagoras and his followers is measured to some extent by the great influence they had upon later philosophers, particularly Plato. There's much in Plato that first came to light in the teaching of Pythagoras, including the importance of the soul and its threshold division, and the importance of mathematics as related to the concept of form and the forms, which he goes into when he explains his view on the cosmos, which I did an episode on, but I don't know if it really did something. I feel like I kind of fucked around and didn't explain it all. So I'm gonna either redo it or add on what I missed, one of those two. But that part where it talked about just philosophical activity. Like that was like they had leisure time. The wealthy city, the wealth of the city allowed for leisure time, and if that wasn't present, then philosophy and art could not develop. And that's what I've been so like kind of turned off by when I noticed there's just no real outlet for it other than shows and shit. But like there should be places for creative minds to go congregate. I talk about this I think frequently, but like I think that's something that our culture is desperately needing and lacking of. That's kind of why I'm doing this, you know. I don't know, just try to start a conversation. Hopefully, maybe that in turn leads to something else, turns into a place where people can engage in intellectual activity.